do it. Change, change. It's a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Good afternoon or good morning, depending where you're at. I'm Barbara Schreiner-Trudell, and I'm a host of Spirit Café. My co-host is Cheryl Rogers, and we are delighted today to share with you courageous conversations for changing times. And our guest today is the remarkable Reverend Rev Z Sep. He is the senior minister of CSL Denver and previously served as a special focus and young adult minister at Mile High Church. He's a former Islamic imam, and professionally, he serves as the lead application engineer at LTCI Partners, focusing on IT strategy, process improvements, and system transformation. Alzia is a former chair of the Lakewood, Colorado Cultural Diversity and Human Relations Commissions, as well as a former college professor. Holy man, are we in for something tonight or this afternoon or whatever time it is where you are. Let's welcome Rev Z.
Hello, everyone. So glad to be here. Times they are changing, so I'm happy to be here involved in this changing time.
Well, they are changing, and what I love about that is it's about time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited
to do it
to have
consciously. Go ahead, Cheryl.
No, I'm just saying we're excited to have you, Rev Z, and looking forward to our time together after the brief little conversation we just had.
Yes, I mean, sometimes the audience, you guys should come backstage and, before we come on, we have these amazing free-flowing conversations that just morph, and they turn out to be brilliant stuff. Nothing, it's all no script. It just Spirit drops it in and it goes where it goes.
It just happens. Well, we've been talking about the hurricanes that have hit. Nova Scotia got struck by Fiona the other day, and it's, there's homes in the ocean as a result. And now we've got this big hurricane in Florida. And we were talking a little bit about alignment of planets and the moon and stuff, and how that might affect how the weather is here on Earth. And there's some controversy about that. But Rev Z, you had a few comments, as well as Cheryl, some ideas around the astronomy or astrology or whatever we want to name it.
Yeah, it's interesting because during the beginning of our history of this planet, right? Astronomy / astrology was a science. It was not something that people looked at and scoffed at. The first pope had astrologers on the court. Most kings and queens had astrologers on the court. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people look at it as woo-woo stuff. And I get that, because people do all kinds of things. I mean, I can't control what someone does with the hammer once I give it to them, but I know what the hammer was made for. Now, if you want to use it to put in screws, well, that's not what it's used for. And so I can't give you any advice on that. But when we look at just from a physical planet, the moon causes high tides, low tides, tidal surges, not in one ocean, but all the oceans across the planet.
Yes.
The salinity of the body is roughly the exact same as the salinity of the oceans. So, a friend of mine once told me, he says, look, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, but I'm willing to bet you dollars to donuts, he said, that if the moon has that effect on all of the oceans all over the globe, and you think it doesn't have some effect on you, I'll leave you with that. He says, I'm not trying to tell you what it means. I'm just saying that just based on the physics of the universe, there is an effect. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we have begun, I think, in a lot of ways, because a lot of young people are now back into astrology, and hopefully they're getting good leadership in that. But we're now moving back to some of the ancient wisdom, and it's being proven out in quantum physics, some of the, as they say, pseudosciences. A lot of these stories and magical and mythical stories are proving themselves to be quite accurate and quite true.
Yeah,
Beautiful. And
absolutely.
Cheryl, you mentioned something about Jupiter.
Yeah, well, Jupiter is right now closer to the Earth than it's been in 59 years. It's about half the distance closer to what it normally is. And so, that got me thinking about the effect that that may have on the weather systems we're having. And I don't know much about where the other planets are, but they're moving as well, right? The whole system moves at the same time, and it must have an impact. And I like what you said, Rev Z, that this was at one time, it was science. You look at the Mayans, you look at the Egyptians, all the ancient temples and things like that, how they were aligned with the stars, how they were aligned with the different planets, and so how can we think that there's nothing to it? And as you were talking, it made me think about how easily we are swayed, right? Like in that time, it was a science and it was okay. And then somewhere along the line, it became a little bit of a taboo. And then, so it's how easily we are swayed as a society and just move with the view of the day.
And it's interesting you say that, because one of the obvious things is they say, oh, it's not a science. Pluto was a planet, now it's not, and you got all these other things out there that you don't count, and this, that, and the other. And I told a guy once, I said, well, when you're learning algebra, they have this thing called cancellation. Like, well, if I'm trying to solve for the problem, I can start canceling things out. Doesn't mean that they're not there or they're not a part of the total, but they're not relevant in this particular equation. So I just cancel them out because they're going to start confusing things. But we don't make that kind of translation. One thing we believe in from our New Thought perspective is the law of correspondence. And in ancient times, as above, so below, as below, so above, right? So there's this correlation, and it does not just go horizontal; it's also vertical. So it's everywhere, and so the challenge is, how do we begin to think outside of the box? How do we begin to think? We were talking backstage, and we just had a ministerial conference that ended yesterday, and we had this amazing book, The Four Pivots of Re-imaging Justice and Re-imaging Ourselves by Dr. Sean. I'm going to get his name again, Glenn Genwright. And one of the things one of his pivots is we have to move in a connection place from this transactional way of thinking to a more transformative way of thinking.
Oh, I love
And
that.
right now we are very transactional. It is, I give something, I get something. And because, we bring in the other law of cause and effect, because we associate cause and effect to be closely related, we don't always look at the long-term effect, which speaks more to transformative, right? And so we are so adept to transaction, and we don't look at the long-range transformative way of life, that we lose so much. And I think that's what's happening in a lot of the stuff now. I mean, you were talking about the difference, as we call them sometimes, sacred sites. There is, I was talking with my brother the other day, and we were doing some work, and we were looking at these things, and he said, oh, wow, that's a coincidence. No, wow, that's a cool. And he said, well, shucks, if we get 3 or 4 coincidences together, then it ain't no coincidence no more.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And so when you look at all these different societies and how they used the planets and the alignments and how they set up, you know, structures to do whatever. We don't even know what they did, right?
Yeah.
We're still guessing. We can't even rebuild them with all of the computer technology and constructional technology. We are still trying to figure out how, you know, you look at the Great Pyramid of Egypt.
Yeah.
Some of those blocks are the size of freight trains, right? And they are put in such a precise location with no cement or mortar, and you can't get a, you know, a dime through some of those spaces after thousands of years.
Mhm.
And so we, you know, we want to know, what did they know that we have forgotten as human society? And so we're in some interesting times because it's starting to be revealed, and we're going to have to respond one way or the other.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And even, I was talking earlier about Chichen Itza and the Mayan ruins there, and the one pyramid that, during solstice, all of a sudden you can see the body of a snake down the side of it that culminates at this carved head at the bottom. It's like, well, how does that happen?
Mm-hmm.
You know, this was built many, many years ago without all the technology we have. And I don't think there's anybody here who could do it today.
No,
Mm-hmm.
So
not
I'm
and
wondering about that, tapping into that intuitive, divine aspect of ourselves, and if they were more in tune with that than what we are.
Oh, absolutely.
yeah. Go ahead, go ahead,
No,
Cheryl.
I was just going to say, how could they not have been?
Yes.
When you look back at the ancient civilizations and how they lived and what they built and what they did, like, in my mind, there's no question, even though I know that's my perception,
Yeah.
right? I get that, but that's how I feel about that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've read as much as Rev Z has, but I've dabbled in some of these things, footprints of the gods and all those kind of things. And
Yeah.
it's just mind-boggling when you think how precise these
Yeah.
measurements are, like the base of the pyramid and, things like that. It's just like, I don't even, I think you mentioned earlier when we were just coming on, we can't even do some of those things today.
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
Right?
they there was a program, I don't know how long ago, on PBS. It's been a while. They sent some of their best uh, architects and engineers or whatever to go try to build a pyramid, and it was abysmal failure. They, and it was small. All right, it wasn't to scale. And I think, one thing you hit on there, I think that's key, is that we in our ideal spirituality talk about the observer or the witness, right?
Yes.
um that connects us to all there is. And when we look at these ancient, if you will, societies, they all had a very clear practice of observation, meditation, contemplative practices,
Yeah.
where they shut everything down
Yeah.
so that they could go within and be reflecting the insight or the wisdom or whatever people want to call it, doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
uh, so that they could tap into something that, if you, as you were saying, with the perception of my own little glasses here, uh, I can't see. I mean, right now we know these waves of this program are traveling all over the globe right now.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
if you have the right equipment and you understand the right frequency, you tune right in.
Yeah.
But if
Exactly.
you don't, you don't even know we exist.
And I think that's what they were doing. They were going within, but they were also tuning in. They were
Yeah.
aligning themselves with something higher, right? That's what I believe. And so, when you hear about even the shamans and the medicine people and things like that, right? I mean, they were magical and their medicine works and worked then
Yes.
and today, and so again, it's like, how can we just poo-poo that stuff? How can we just deny that any of that has really great significance, but I really do believe it does, because we could learn so much from it.
Yeah.
One of the things I wonder about, Rev Z, and I don't know if you've had any readings or thoughts, but I always think about what happened to these civilizations. Where did they go?
Now there's a deep question for sure.
There's $1 million question there, and I mean, because if we go all the way back to Atlantis, right, the mythical Atlantis, as they say, they haven't. There's tangential evidence all around, but they haven't found any concrete. You can start there, and then you can just go through Egypt or Mesopotamia, or all these different societies. And I think one of the theories, I will put it out there like this: one of the theories, prevailing theories, is that it's a path that we find ourselves on right now. In that, one of the theories, if we go back to Atlantis, is this: that they got so technically advanced and they could not reconcile the opposites, right? One of the spiritual principles is, the only difference between north and south is a degree, right? And so if I start fighting over 1 degree and trying to make a point on that 1 degree when there are hundreds or thousands or infinite other degrees, I lose perspective.
Yeah.
And so now we get this, what we're into a little bit now in our culture is this
imbalance,
separation, this not looking at thing in dualism and not duality, because duality says that there are 2 sides to every coin, and we know that. We have an outside body, we got an inside body. We got up, we got down, we got left, we got right. So the opposites are just showing you different aspects of the one thing, right? There's no such thing as hot and cold. There is temperature, and there are varying degrees of temperature. If I go to the extreme left, let's say, it's hot. If I go to the extreme right, it's cold. But it's one thing. I'm looking at it in a various, aspects of itself. And so when we look at the globe, the universe, it's the same way. It's one thing, but I love this quote by Alan Watts. He said 2 things that I love. He said, as long as we keep getting sharper knives, we're going to find smaller and smaller parts. Right. So the more I can cut it, I'm going to keep finding something that's there. And we've proven that with the Hadron Colliders over there in Switzerland, where they keep doing the bangs they're finding new quarks and Higgs bosons and all these different things. Yeah. Then the other thing he said is, we have to live life in oscillation. We have to live life at the macro, at the micro, macro, and the in-between. And I have to oscillate, because if I get stuck in the micro, I know very well all the details, but I lose perspective. If I look at it in the normal sense, I can navigate, but I still, if I don't, if I got all the skills, I don't know where I'm going, I got a problem. And at the 10,000 foot level, I can see everything, but nothing's happening because I'm not doing any details. And so it's a constant oscillation to look at these different levels to figure out not only where I'm going, but what am I doing and how do I stay on course?
I read a great article a few years back in Newsweek magazine. The cover was "Science Finds God." And it was really powerful, because there were scientists who were speaking about the fact that they could not realize exactly what they had proven. Like, there was no way that it could be without the idea of a higher power. That what they have solved or what they've created or where they have gone to can only anchors the idea that there has to be an intelligence back of the universe, whatever you want to name it. And that for me was a very fascinating article, that all of a sudden we've got Newsweek giving some interesting news and an interesting perspective, and scientists become rabbi, and things like that. It was really quite remarkable. And I look at stuff like that and I go, we're evolving in consciousness, right? We're constantly sort of waking up, or not, but we have that choice of going, now what? And sort of expanding what we think we know or what we think we believe, and sort of pushing the boundaries a little bit. What's next? What
Yeah.
else is out there? What else is possible? And I
Mhm.
think that's what's really exciting. And then when we think about astrology or astronomy, it's like, well, what is the impact? People
Hmm.
talk constantly about Mercury's gone retrograde, and I'm going, okay, I don't really know what that means, but it seems like it impacts anything that has to do with electronics or
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
Um, so, I look at all these things and go, well, we all have our beliefs. And
Yeah.
if our beliefs create, then is any of it wrong?
You know, that so interesting. You said that. We were talking. I'm listening to some of Ken Wilber's work on integral systems and so forth, and listen to this one interview, and they're asking him pretty much that. They asked this question about what is enlightenment, and he has these stages of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Where we start out in archaic, and then we go to magical, then we go to mythical, then we go to I think it's dualism, and then we go to oneness, right? I think I may have
Yeah.
missed one in there, but
Yeah.
the question was, if I'm looking at enlightenment, can I have someone that's in an archaic structure, worldview, preview of the world, reach enlightenment? And his point was yes, because you can go through these stages of states, rather, of consciousness, which we experience when we meditate or we experience when we go into
Mhm.
dream state. We know that there are different states of consciousness: waking
Mhm.
state, dream state,
Mhm.
meditative state. But I can go all the way up to the highest level of consciousness where I can get to the point of states of oneness. But if I'm looking at the world through an archaic structure, I'm going to operate in that. I'll be enlightened in that structure. But if I
Yeah.
move archaic up to magic or magic up to mythical, I'm
Yeah.
not there anymore. Right. And
Yeah.
so we have to buy into, I believe, and I'm going to say buy into this concept of evolution. Now, we can
Mhm.
call it another name if you don't like that one and you start thinking about whatever, but
Yeah.
we know for sure that there is a hierarchical level. Subatomic particles make up molecules. Molecules make up cells. Cells make up organs. Organs make up,
Mhm.
entities. There
Mhm.
is a hierarchical place, and they when cells give way to an organ, they don't disappear. They just
Mhm.
they just transform themselves from a transactional state, as we were saying earlier, to a more transformative state.
Right.
So it doesn't lose anything per se; it gains by
Mhm.
having a bigger preview of the world, if you will.
Mhm.
And so we have to begin, I think, to look at life that way. And maybe demeaning to some, look at ourselves as just little cells that need
Mhm.
to, come together as a family or community or world or whatever, because that model is all over nature.
It
Right.
is. Yeah, and I think of myself as the micro of the macro. I can't separate from it. I'm an aspect of it. But so whatever's going on in me, I often look at, like, if I get a disease in my body, well, if I look at the macrocosm, we see those areas that we could call dis-ease,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Whether it's a war in Ukraine, or it's a war in the Middle East, or it's violence in our schools, whatever it is an effect of consciousness. Just like in my own body, I will create an effect of consciousness, such as arthritis or cancer or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like all of this energy is happening and moving all the time,
Mhm.
according to consciousness.
Yes.
Mhm. And that's why expanding consciousness is part of that evolution. It's not just about a physical evolution. It's our consciousness, which is what you were talking about with Ken Wilber. He's talking about the evolution of consciousness.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of consciousness affecting physical, right? If I want to get in shape, I have to have a conscious idea about being in shape, and then I have to move that conscious idea to a physical activity
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
make the change, right?
Mhm.
And some of these things are so simple if we just stop and try not to be too fancy. Try not to be too, whatever, right? The simple things. That's like, I love with math, right? Math can get really, really complex. And the first thing they teach you in math, when you start dealing with complex things and abstract pieces, the first thing they do, simplify it down to the lowest terms. Whatever it is, whether it's a fraction, whether it's equation, we need to simplify it down so we can get to the heart of it, right? We have the whole idea of the Fibonacci sequence, right, where things repeat themselves, right? And so they have these studies where you take one floweret of a broccoli and you put it up against the whole broccoli, and the shape looks the same because it's the one pattern that keeps replicating itself over and over again. So if we want to understand the whole, we go back down to the simple so that we understand it, and then we can extrapolate back out. But if we start extrapolating and we don't understand the basic concepts, it's going to go awry. And I think that's where the ancient ones had the ability to focus. I ain't trying to prove myself to nobody. I'm not trying to, get the award or get the trophy or, the grant money. I'm trying to understand the life that I'm living in, and I need to understand it at the simplest form. So when we look at ancient culture, when they had so-called gods represented animals, it wasn't the animal that they were revering. It was the possibility and the practice and the skills of that animal that they said, I can't do that. Bats see ultraviolet. I can't see that. See infrared. I can't see that. I have to get a whole nother apparatus to try to see that. And somehow they figured that out.
Yeah, it's very cool. We're going to take a little commercial break here. You're watching Spirit Cafe. We're so glad you're here. Our guest is Rev Z today. And boy, we're having a fun conversation that's going places I never even thought they would go. And it's wonderful and exciting. Be right back.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
Welcome back.
You're watching
Yes,
Spirit
exciting.
Cafe.
Yes, we are. Spirit Cafe, and it's just so exciting. I'm thoroughly enjoying this topic very much. I'm wondering where would you like to go next with this, Rev Z, or would you like us to?
I think as we've been talking about evolution and the progression of things, I think the next movement from where we've kind of at least created a container for people to explore ancient cultures, ancient wisdom, and Ernest Holmes said, don't take my word for it. Do your own study, practice,
Yeah.
and put this stuff to work in your own life. So I think we've created a container and hopefully some curiosity where people can go and look at some of these ancient ideas and wisdoms and teachings to figure out, okay, are they relevant today? What kind of foundation have they set for us? And I think, the next logical step is this futuristic aspect. Where are we going now? What is the next evolutionary step in life, really, right? And so I think one of the key things that always comes up is this idea of holism or oneness or unity. And I think ancient cultures have given us ample evidence, and we see it now, especially with quantum physics, that it all comes together at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I know one of the things that I'm trying to get into my life is, and it can be hard. I'll just, let's not do what some people do, try to make everything easy. Some things are hard, all right, and that's the way it is, right?
Right, absolutely.
And so my thing now is understanding the energetics of the body. Our body we are an electric magnet, right?
Yes.
And that's just, if I had a heart attack right now, I would want somebody with some electricity in that defibrillator to restart my electrical system here, which gives me life, right? The Stein kind of thing, right? It's alive. And so, I think now what we have to do in at least one aspect is understand the subtleties of life, which is energy, and we know that energy moves in various ways. And we said in the beginning about how this show is just energy moving through the airways. And when it's in tune, it pulls it down. So if we begin to look futuristic, how do we tune our bodies so that we pull in the information that gets translated into different programs, different ideas, different structures to accentuate the wholeness, the oneness of life, and not the separation of life, which we seem to be stuck in at this point in time.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because actually Cheryl and I have a meeting after this about building bridges even within the New Thought movement.
Yes.
Because, we in New Thought are talking about oneness all the time, man. We can get it going. And then we practice separation.
Yeah.
Well, CSL is better than unity, or unity is better than CSL, or UFBL. What's UFBL? Divine science? I don't know if I've heard about that. AGNT, ANT. Come on, what is all this stuff? INT, what's going on here? And we've got all of these little, and wherever I am on the continuum, well, mine is really good, but really that's just more separation. And what I love, when we think about the body, we think about evolution, we think about consciousness. My daughter was born without wisdom teeth. Well, that's evolution, right? Because we've been yanking them out for as long as I know of. And all of a sudden, babies are being born without them, without tonsils. Many children today do not have tonsils.
Isn't that amazing?
It's evolution. We're evolving into it's like we've put a message out to the universe going, oh, this is irrelevant. And so over time, it becomes non-existent.
Yeah.
Because we no longer need it. So, when I think about my personal evolution, of course, I look at how I create, and of course, ideas transform into the physical universe. And so I always go back to what is it I'm thinking? What is it I'm believing? What is it I'm talking about? Where's the focus of my attention? That I can begin to move the energy in a way that I would prefer. And when we were talking about astrology, I couldn't help but think about one particular president of the United States.
Yeah.
Who, Ronald Reagan, like they were, like, oh yeah, check that out, the actor, but the reality is that there's some information there that maybe we don't fully understand or comprehend, but there are messages that are constantly evolving. Years ago, a very dear, sweet friend of mine who passed away 20 years ago, but her and I had a conversation. She was psychic. And so people have different ideas about psychics, and I'm sure some of them are, fly by night, give me your cash kind of guys. But this woman said to me, the last reading we had together, because she used to love to do this, and I would just take it with a grain of salt because she was my best friend. It's like, yeah, whatever. So she said to me, this is December 31st of 2001. And she said to me, well, next year you're going to get married. And I'm thinking, I ain't even dating.
Mhm.
And then the second thing she said to me is, you're going to have another child. And I went, oh, okay, I think you finally lost it. You used to be a good psychic. I don't know anymore. A couple of months later, I meet my husband, Pierre, and we get married in October of 2002, right? She had said this in 2001, 2002. And I'm like, how does that happen? We're going to celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary next week. And it's like, and I'm like, okay. So we get together. My husband's never been married before. And he's like, well, would you be willing to have more children? Because my 3 were all grown up. And I'm going, well, I don't think it's possible, but okay. And I'd said to Carolyn at the time, I said, well, there's no way that I'm having a baby. Number one, I'm like 44 years old. So like, sorry, the train has left the station. And the second thing is, frankly, I don't want any more children. Mine are grown up. I got a little freedom happening here.
Yes.
And so Pierre asked me about it. And I said, well, I don't think I can, but I'm willing to explore the topic. And he said, well, if you can't have kids, would you adopt? And I went, okay. So now we go back to science. And my baby girl came out of the in vitro fertilization process. And, I always say never, because when you
Yes.
do, it's probably going to manifest. So,
Yes.
so I now have a 17-year-old. I'm 65 years old. And I'm like, what was I thinking? But I'll tell you, greatest gift ever. But
Yes.
again, science and ideas and thoughts, all of it kind of morphed together. But Carolyn was right.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, she died 2 weeks before my wedding. She died in 2002.
Oh, wow.
And so I did her memorial service about a week and a half prior to the day of my wedding.
Mhm.
Wow.
So it was a real emotional, because she
Yeah.
died very unexpectedly at age 52.
Mm.
So I was, emotions can't even begin to describe it. But everything she said came to pass. And I thought, okay, so how do we explain that away?
Well, and this is the whole thing. Why does everything need an explanation? Right? Because when you spoke about the waves that are going out that are bringing this to different parts of the world, electricity that turns on the light. We don't see these things, but we know they exist because we see something. So just because we don't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. For many years, this technology didn't exist, electricity didn't exist, but it's always been there, right? So, that's where I wonder how we can just, I don't know, for me, how we can just be in awe of the things that we use and that we have, and then still think that, well, there's nothing more and there's nothing else out there.
We can't see gravity. We can't see electricity. We can't see the Wi-Fi signal.
Yeah. So,
and I as you were talking, both of you, I mean, my mind was doing 1,000 miles an hour just thinking about, okay, so just on that topic alone, we can take it and say, okay, there is a principle of electricity, right?
Yes.
But no one has ever seen that principle, and it's a universal principle, right?
It is.
And from that principle of electricity, if we go into our objective, observational, witness mind, we can extract from that principle different concepts that creates laws that now we can get hydroelectricity and solar electricity and nuclear electricity and turbine electricity, right? So we have this principle, this oneness thing, and of that oneness thing, if we observe it enough, if we are curious enough, if we fall into, as you were saying, Cheryl, the mystery of it, I don't understand it, but I'm going to play with it. I'm going to wrestle with it. And when it's time, when I tune to the right frequency, it'll drop out, right? And so we have this amazing way of looking at life and living that we do not follow in our everyday individual lives or collective lives. And so I love that, we just had the symbol up of the rainbow, right? And in the beginning of your program, I saw there was this, I love it, the prism that takes what appears to be a white light, but that's not what it is at all. When I put it through a certain medium, it diffracts into the, Roy G. Biv, right? So, but as we know, we got a white light coming in, all these multiple coming out. What else is not coming out, right? What else is present in that one stream that we need the right apparatus or the right way of thinking or living or eating or, pick a topic. And these things drop out.
Yeah.
So we have to begin to be more curious about life. This planet has been around for 1 billion years. More, billion plus, obviously, right? It's like 13 billion, actually, if I get correct on the numbers. And there are things that are going on in this space-time continuum that we have not even begun to think about.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. So I wonder what you think, because when you talk about, raising our consciousness and things dropping out, I've come to believe that when we raise our consciousness, we're tapping in. It's already there. So we're not attracting things to us. We're moving towards what's already there.
And I think it's a little bit of both, right?
Okay.
Because the way I like to explain it is like, we have this idea of collective thought, right? A universal thought, right? So I like to think of it, and I think Carl Jung gave a good example of it. I mean, he's I think, father of this one when we start talking about archetypes, right?
Yeah.
It's that I look at it as this idea of saying, okay, we all have these thoughts, individual, a fleeting thought about this, that, the other. And just like rain clouds, right? The sun is here. The sun brings up small droplets of dew and water and whatever. And eventually they coalesce into a cloud. Now, individually, those little drops of water are just drops of water, right? But when they come together and form a cloud and they get heavy, the rain comes down, right? And so that was one of the ways I interpreted Carl Jung's of these archetypes. Like, the mother archetype is in all cultures. The jokester archetype is in all cultures. They call them different things in the Native American or African or Irish, whatever the culture may is, the archetype is present. And so that, again, it speaks to the cycle of life. Just like the water rains. Now we got the Hurricane Ian coming through Florida. That water is coming and dropping. Pretty soon it'll go away. The sun will come out. Those water droplets will come back up and they'll form another cloud. And boom, we got a cycle going on, right? When we look at the hurricane itself, it's a spiral cycle going around. And so in nature, which by the way, the ancients felt that the most important scripture was nature itself. Because it's unfailing. Hurricanes been doing what hurricanes been doing for billions of years.
Yeah.
And so there's a wisdom there, whether we want to call it that or not. There's an understanding. There's a allowing this energy to move through it. That it all right. Well, I'm gonna tear some stuff up and I'm gonna fix some stuff on the other end. I mean, that's just life.
Yeah.
That's kind of like
I'm
Trump.
cold, but I'm not trying to be cold.
That's kind of like Trump, right? Come in and mess everything up just to bring everything to the surface so we could look at it.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same. It's like a hurricane. It's just moving. It's moving what already is, bringing it to the surface so it can be reordered, restructured, and create new
cleaned up.
Yeah.
Cleaned up.
And definitely, my heart goes out to everyone down in the Hurricane Way. I have family that are right now in the direct hit line of that storm. I just spoke with my nephew and I said, hunker down, boy, don't be safe. And so we know that life, this is life, and we need to start trying to, I believe, fantasize what life could be and deal with what life is, and then create a new a stand or a new engagement with life, which can become a fantasy, but we have to be participants in it. We can't just expect it to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
And
this. Oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
no, I was just going to say, and it starts with each one of us, right? It starts from what's going on within each one of our hearts, our minds, our thoughts, with our own consciousness.
Yes.
To be able to, like you said, be those unique expressions that then come together and actually join to create something different. Yeah. Whether it be better or not, we're doing it and it's going to be created. So let's do it mindfully and intentionally, so that, we can have a unique outcome.
Wouldn't that be nice? Get on the other side.
Bring something up. Go ahead, Rev B.
I was just going to say, it reminds me of taking a look at the Bible from a metaphysical perspective. Really, it is the journey of humanity. We go from, the murdering, the stealing, the breaking down of things into the consciousness of the Christ, which happens in the New Testament. And it's like it's the human journey. It's that path of finding myself. It's finding in my center, we call it transforming humanity into the sacred, authentic self. And it's, we're coming out of the dirt, out of the dregs, out of the chaos, confusion, everything's hard and difficult, and my life isn't working, into that place of surrender in which the consciousness then elevates and comes out in what Christians would call the Christ consciousness, and what we might call that higher consciousness or that divine intelligence, that one mind. And all of a sudden we see the transition. And then from there, we can practice oneness a whole lot easier. But the journey to there is sometimes painful.
And you bring up a great point, or remind me of a great point, and that is, I tell a lot of my students and members of my congregation that, I challenge everybody to get one of the little pocket thesauruses, or you can get one on your phone. You don't even have to buy another book. You can get your phone, but that we begin to reframe our language, right? Because now if you go to someone and you say, oh, there's oneness, people look at you and like, oh, it's one of them, right? You start talking about unity, oh, it's one of them, right? And so now the language has become so charged that you say one trigger word, if you will, like a Manchurian candidate, it all turns off, right? So we have to begin to reframe our language.
We do. To
create statements and phrases and words, as you were saying earlier, Cheryl, that creates this mysteriousness, this thing that makes you want to go investigate it, so that you can come to your own understanding of what life is. That's why I love so much about Ernest Holmes in that idea where he says, look, I'm telling you, this is how I see it. And I know everybody have to make it contextualized for themselves. So don't take my word. Practice these principles and these ideas in the laboratory, which means I may have to do it several times to get the dang on lab experiment right in your own life.
Yeah.
And, I love the analogy of, no matter how good my language is, I can never describe to you what a mango tastes like.
Yeah,
exactly.
I say that about pregnancy and giving birth, right? You could never describe that to anybody.
But it can be different for everybody.
Yeah.
But there's that commonality that once you ate the mango, or once you've had the child, that you can start talking in half sentences. I remember, and I remember, and because there's an unspoken language there from experience that cannot be spoken of.
100%. When I was, I don't know how old I was. My mom still tells the story. I think I was about 18. She was trying to give me some advice or something. And I said to her, I know you're trying to help me and I know you care, Mom, but I have to experience it myself. Right. And that's really what you're talking about. You can't, and you made a comment a couple of weeks ago, we were in the show, you can't, I think you said, you don't know anybody's experience until you've walked in their shoes.
Yes.
And you know, and so that's the same thing for me, right? When we're talking about those kinds of things, that was a conversation about race and racism and
Yes.
and all the inequities we've experienced in life, and some of us so much differently and more in other ways that we can't relate to. And so it's the same thing. We can talk about it, but we will always talk about it from a different space if we haven't actually experienced it. And if and part of, for me, what experience means is when we have this curiosity and this learning, this need to learn and understand, as we grasp things, I believe, you know, it's embodied in us. And that's how we're able to talk about it. Whereas for me to try and talk about a book that I've just read, you know, I can tell you that book was absolutely fantastic. You've got to read it. Ask me what it's about. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Really?
It's like the ancient wisdom that says, those who know do not say, and those who say do not know. Because once you've touched, you know, in the Christian tradition, once you've touched the hem of the garment, or in another tradition, once you reemerge back into the oneness, there's no way for you to describe that. So you just like, you know, I can give you some little pointers. It's like the hand pointing at the moon. That's all I can do is point to it.
Yeah, exactly. And what I love about these conversations is that we're all on this journey of exploration of, you know, the big question, who are we and why are we here, right? and so I love these conversations because it also, when I hear something from someone else, from their reading experience, knowledge, or whatever, it can prompt a thought. It might shift something I think I know, because we only think we know things. I don't know that we know anything. And it also then prompts me to be curious and maybe delve into that deeper, you know? And so for me, that's really what, for me, life is about. And choosing to experience that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love having conversations about God, because so many people have trouble with that word. And so I did a talk a while ago, oh God, now what? And just talking about, like, we can't know it. We can have an experience of it maybe, but for the most part, we have no idea of what that means. And I remember my daughter saying, oh, I don't believe in God. And I went, well, yeah, that's because you're talking to people who are talking about some guy in the sky who's you know, aiming judgment at us all the time. And I said, that's not my concept. That's not the concept you've been raised with. So of course you don't believe in that, but you believe in creativity and possibility. Well, isn't that divine? You believe in imagination. Isn't that tapping in somehow? We love, we unite as one. All of these different experiences we have, all of it is happening in this one universal whatever. But we can't know it. We can't really describe it. And one word sure as heck isn't gonna define it for us. And if we have, I said, you know, call it Fred, call it whatever you want. I mean, ultimately, you'll never know what it is anyway.
Yeah. And probably the more obnoxious the name you can call it, the better, right? Because I can't get fixated on it, right? I can't, you know, romanticize it, right? And so, because I think that's what happens often is that we get into our different isms, if you will, and we try to we try to nail something down like water, right? Well, you ain't never gonna nail water down. You can try, and then if you think you have, and you start explaining the world from nailing down water, your whole image is gonna be off, right? And so that's what we've done. We tried to take this fluid thing and nail it down so that we can feel comfortable, so that we can pontificate, so that we can, exercise some whatever over something or someone else. And at any given time in real life, you could be on the top or you could be on the bottom or somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all good if you understand the evolution of life, the evolution of consciousness, the as you were saying, the adventurous hero journey and shero journey that each of us are on, and just give into it.
Yeah, be with what is and watch it evolve. I think that's the interesting thing is, can I just be okay with not knowing? Because the truth is, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know a lot. I don't know a whole lot more than I do know. So that sort of opens up a whole can of worms, shall we say, of exploration, possibility, curiosity. Even when I'm teaching classes, it's like somebody will ask a question, and sometimes it's like, "Well, I have no idea."
Yeah.
All right, let's just sit with that. Let's see what where that takes us, because I think exploration of possibilities is exciting too, because anything is possible.
Yeah.
We're not bound or limited by anything at all,
Yeah.
except our own beliefs.
I'm just thinking about the word exploration. We were talking earlier about math and how you make substitutions and X things out. So I just had this redefinition of exploration, is that we X out those things that are not relevant or whatever, and we transport or import those things that are needed. So we have this exploration of life by looking at it and turning it and holding it and up and down it till it becomes a part of us, so that we can now own it. And that's what, when you look at all these hero journeys, and now we have the superheroes, which are another hero's journey, right? It's all about overcoming some challenge or getting in true alignment with the principle, whatever that principle is, whether it's justice or whatever. And when they can do that, when they can get beyond themselves and align themselves with the principle, they can withstand at that moment whatever the obstacle is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a story that we happen to go through every day.
Absolutely.
Every day, every minute. Yeah.
And there are many ways, many ways.
Yeah.
Many paths of exploration.
Many superheroes, right?
There you go.
And sheroes.
There you go. Absolutely.
Final words. Rev
Wow.
Z, what have you got for us today?
We just ended on that's it. We should each go out and explore our heroism and sheroism and figure out what our kryptonite is, who our arch nemesis is, whatever, all these things that are keeping us from getting in alignment with the principles of the universe, so that we can bring forth our gifts, our superpower, our oneness in exploration and exhibit it to the world.
I love that, Rev Z. Thank you.
Thank
Cheryl.
you. I just thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. And I know that I'll probably watch it again just because it's inspired so many thoughts in my mind and things to look at. So I'm just so grateful, Rev Z. Thank you for being here with us.
Thanks, Cheryl. Well, I'm really excited too, because this conversation went in many different directions than I expected, and I am thrilled about that. And Rev Z, every time you and I get together, it seems like something remarkable occurs that probably was never expected, but here it is. So I'm looking forward to the day that you arrive in Toronto, so we can do this in person, which would be really exciting.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you. You are truly a gift and a blessing. Cheryl, my beloved sister, you are my most awesome gift. And I just want to say to everybody who's watching today, thank you for being here. We love you. We appreciate you. You've been watching Spirit Cafe with Cheryl and Barbara and our beautiful guest, Rev Z. We'll be back again next week. Stay tuned.
See you then.
See you then.